In 1970, the minimum wage was $1.40. That is $224 a month. However, the average apartment was only $108. So for 48% of your check, you could get an apartment. Fast forward to 2024, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, which is $1,160 a month, but the average apartment is $1,700. You cannot even afford an apartment today. In fact, if you make twice the minimum wage, you cannot afford an apartment in 2024. If you want to know what it was like growing up in 1970, the average apartment today should be $556. Millennials and Gen Zers, can you imagine how incredible life would be if rent was only $556? But let's look back to 1970 at the median household income. It was $8,700, and the median house price was just $17,000, so just 2 times the yearly salary. Fast forward to today, median household income $85,000, median house $400,000. That is 4.7 times. If you want to know what it was like in 1970, the average house today should be $170,000, which is fair, which would help everyone get into a house, and the American dream would still be alive. So yes, things are always difficult for every generation, but it is significantly harder for millennials and Gen Zers. So boomers, let's stop beefing with each other and let's see how we can help the millennials and Gen Zers have a bright future.
With millennials approaching later years, society is starting to rain down different pressures upon them, whether that's finding an actual career, settling down and starting a family, or just simply moving out of mommy and daddy's house on their own. Well, in this video, we're going to continue the discussion surrounding how many people are starting to find themselves approaching middle ages and are having a hard time struggling to barely survive on minimum wage. And this problem and issue does affect many more people than you think. And if you personally can relate to anything discussed in today's video, or if you can relate to anything or have any other thoughts or opinions, feel free to leave those down below in the comments. And I want to give a huge shout out to half of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. Now, let's begin this shit show.
So out of a recent study, they say that there is no state in the U.S. where a 40-hour minimum wage work week is enough to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And then there's people on this app that will sit here and literally argue me down talking about you're in the wrong state. This post right here says otherwise, motherfucker. So in my state, New Jersey, I think the minimum wage is around $15 per se, but the average 1-bedroom, not even 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom is like $1,800, $1,900. And don't even get me started about the 2-bedrooms. So with minimum wage in New Jersey, you're probably making $2,400 a month, but yet, let's not forget that there is taxes, so you're probably maybe bringing home $1,700, $1,600. So that's still not enough to cover for a 1, let alone a 2-bedroom apartment. And then you gotta pay for gas, electric, food, and other bullshit that you wanna do. So yeah, 1 job is not gonna cut it. So you definitely have to work 2 jobs. That is the minimum right now for this economy. So I wanna ask you guys, how the fuck are you doing it? What are you doing to get better? And this is why I always say you gotta maximize your side hustles and your other income, because one doesn't cut it anymore.
The concept of minimum wage has always been kind of a contradicting concept because it definitely varies depending on where you live, the area that you're living in, you grew up in, or your like current surroundings, as well as, you know, the cost of living in your area and all these other factors at play. So if you really, and also where you work, because different companies, different jobs affect different pay raises and different sort of whatever. So you really have to break down kind of all these different factors and kind of determine, like, okay, am I getting paid a fair wage? Should I move? Should I jump jobs? Whatever. And a lot of people find themselves kind of jumping careers. So the idea of a career doesn't really exist for a lot of people, which has caused many people to not really feel very like reliable, or not really feel like very trustworthy, that they're going to be able to hold down their job, their career for a long time. So many people find themselves just stagnant with these survival jobs, which at the end of the day is mostly not really going to keep up with the cost of living crisis that has been oh so insanely crazy over the last couple of years, the last 2 years. At least many of us have been experiencing that. And it might seem like, oh, I've been fine, but if you read through a lot of the comments, if you check out a lot of the online forums, not just the people complaining online, bitching and moaning, a lot of the real people who actually have money have experienced this as well, and the costs are getting crazy, and for the people that are struggling, it is a much harder struggle than it used to be. So, do you personally think that minimum wage is a good concept? Some people think there should be no minimum wage at all, and then that might change how the certain pay structure would be, but I don't know. What do you personally feel about the whole minimum wage construct?
Check out this chart. It shows us what the federal minimum wage would be if it kept up with worker productivity. You see, in the years after World War II, the minimum wage rose in tandem with the nation's growing productivity. As workers produce more on the job, they earn more. It's no coincidence that during this time, many workers belonged to unions. But then, starting in the 1960s and 70s, and even more dramatically after 1980, the link between productivity and the minimum wage broke. Instead of workers getting paid more as they produced more, their unions got busted, and their increased productivity helped boost corporate profits and CEO pay. Guess how much the federal minimum wage would be today if it kept up with worker productivity over the years? Nearly $26 an hour. $26! But instead, it's just a measly $7.25. It's a poverty wage for any worker earning it. And it hasn't been raised since 2009. While some states and cities have increased their own minimum wages over the years, they still fall short of $26 an hour. Folks, this isn't a partisan issue. Both Republicans and Democrats have held control of the federal government since 2009, and neither party enacted a minimum wage hike. Raising the federal minimum wage to a living wage would lift working people out of poverty. It would reduce the need for taxpayer dollars being spent on government assistance programs. And as workers earn more money, they spend more money, leading to job creation and a boost in the economy. But even more important than all that, we should raise the federal minimum wage because it's the right thing to do. No one who works full-time should be in poverty.
Continuing this discussion from this primer commentary right there about how minimum wage definitely differs depending on where you live, being that in some areas it can be as low as $7.25, which, by the way, is like the federal standard, which hasn't been changed since 2009, almost 20 years, like 16 years or something like that. Crazy shit to really think about. And as well as in some places, like where I'm from, it's like $15. I think it raised to $16.50. But you have to realize the reason why it might feel like, oh wow, that's so much money, but it's only that high. That's a minimum wage. You need to at least make $15 or $16.50 an hour to even be able to survive in that local area. And when I was living by myself in a one-bedroom, I could have lived in a studio, maybe reduce my cost. But then again, you have to realize in these more populated cities, it can be harder to find places for these cheap costs, and all these places you need to have 3 times the rent to even get in, a good background check, not that I have to worry about that, but there's all these different factors, as well as the time has to match up for your paychecks. It's all, being an adult is a game, it's a race, it's a game of Monopoly that none of us really find ourselves winning, and only a small few, and most of them were already born into the hotels and mansions to begin with. But I'm not really saying I hate the rich, but at the same time, the older I get, the more I find myself, I kind of don't really care about the whole idea of becoming rich, but I do like to hope that one day I can find myself some sort of income, whether that's through these online endeavors that I pursue and I am so passionate about, or just finding an actual career setting where, not that it has to necessarily make me fulfillment, but it can bring me enough fulfillment where I can have just enough money to get by, as well as kind of a little bit of lifestyle, because I'm sick of just surviving. I'd like to be able to live a little bit. I feel like some of you guys probably relate to that, just reading through a lot of the comments.
Just served me for $31K debt that I owe them back from 2023. I beat cancer and I had used my credit cards to survive, and they're finally coming after me. It's $31K. They just served me. Does anyone know what I do? What do I do? Please tell.
Here are 3 things I am not ashamed to admit as someone who has $11,000 in credit card debt. Okay, well, let's get right into it. Number 1, I did it to myself. I swiped the credit card. I made the purchases. It was me. I did it. And that's number 1. Number 2, I do not let my debt define how I live, okay? And so I know a lot of people say I was probably living above my means. However, my current salary does not cover all of my bills. We are on a single income with 3 kids. And so therefore, if they need food, I need to go out and buy it. And I can't say, my bank account is negative, so I go and use my credit card. And number 3, because of all of this, my constant emotions are either, this is perfectly fine, I can totally get through this, and then like through the floor, like, oh my gosh, I'm suffering, I'm dying, and I probably cry to my husband daily about it. So like, roller coaster of emotions with this much debt. Not gonna lie about that.
With the minimum wage being so low and many having to find themselves surviving on this little small amount of chump change, it leaves people having to rely on these debt schemes, whether that's payday loans, just straight up credit card advances, or cash advances, selling all their stuff, doing a pawn America thing, all this stuff. Okay, there's many ways for broke people to get by, and all of them just end up creating this slope downhill. They keep digging a hole for themselves, and eventually the hole is so deep there's nothing, they're stuck down there, and there's nobody else going to help them out because everybody else is stuck in their own holes. We're all just stuck looking up, looking up, and eventually the holes are going to cave in. So once it starts caving in, there's not much saving left. And I'm not saying that there's any saving, because we've seen people on, some of the Dave Ramsey shows, the financial audits, they come back from so much money in debt. But do you really want to take a large majority of your life having to make up for these, type of mistakes? But also, are these really mistakes? Because as some of you guys might say, well, these broke people are dumb. These mistakes are only ways to get by. I mean, how was this single mom supposed to keep her light bill on without taking out this cash advance? How was this, dad who works for multiple people in his family and he has multiple dependents, he's the sole provider, how is he supposed to actually take care of his family without maybe using a little bit of his credit card debt? It just kind of is a good way. And honestly, the way they promote it, it's almost like if you don't use it, you're the wrong one, you're the weirdo. It's going to wrap up this video discussing how mostly millennials, but slowly but surely Gen Z is starting to find themselves struggling to maintain in the modern day workforce. And if you personally can relate to anything discussed in this video, whether that's you having also a similar struggling time in the modern day workforce, or you not even being a part of the workforce at all because of how shitty it is, unless you're trying, and I know some of you guys have been trying to get jobs forever. I read the comments, some of you guys have had jobs and wish you could get out of them. And some of us feel like jobs are just all of a scam all around. So I love to hear all thoughts, opinions, as well as love to read through those, respond to the ones I see fit. And a huge shout out to any of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content on here. It's kind of like I got for this one, so hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next one. Bye.